Hello, I am your host, Tracy Otsuka. Thank you so much for joining me here for another episode of ADHD for Smartass Women. You know, my purpose is always to show you who you are and then inspire you to be it. In the thousands of ADHD women that I've had the privilege of meeting, I've never met not one, that wasn't truly brilliant at something. So, of course, I am just delighted to introduce you to Lucia Kanter St. Amour. Lucia Kanter St. Amour is a negotiation expert, law professor, and unapologetic ADHD brain who's rewriting the rules on how women advocate for themselves. She's the author of For the Forces of Good, a guide to everyday negotiation that flips the script on what it means to ask for what you deserve. With a background in global law, leadership at UN Women, and a talent for storytelling, Lucia blends strategy with soul. Her latest novel, The Covert Buccaneer, is a non-linear ADHD-style narrative that resurrects forgotten women and refuses to play by the rules. Lucia's here to show that being too much is actually your greatest strength. Whether in negotiations, writing, or life, she helps women use their voice, their story, and their brain just as they are. Welcome, Lucia. Did I get all of that right?
I was sitting here listening, thinking, wow, that's like incredible. Wow. Yes, I'm so excited to be here because I do a lot of podcasts, but this one I was thinking, you know what? I could just show up and be me. I don't have to worry about, oh, am I talking too fast? Or am I being too much? Or am I being kind of hyper? Because it's like, no, these are my people. Your audience are my people. So I'm like, just do it. So I'm just extra excited to be here today.
Wonderful. So I want to give a little backstory for our listeners so that you all know something about Lucia, and then she's, I'm sure, going to tell us more. So I first met Lucia almost a year ago at a book event for another author. We'd both worked with the same, I guess you'd call her event producer for our individual books. And I was immediately struck by her energy. She was curious. She was interesting. She was interested, like she actually asked questions, which sadly is not so common today. She casually mentioned that she was a lawyer, a law professor, had worked with the UN, started nonprofits for artists, women, trans folks, neurodivergent people, and she was working on a novel. But most impressive, she was the single mom of two boys, one of whom had special needs. And so I'm listening to this woman talk and I'm thinking, she's nuts, but in the best possible way. What really got me was how much joy she had, not just about what she had accomplished, but about the actual doing of it, especially writing. And I remember wondering, wait, Tracy, is this what it looks like to really love writing? You all know, yeah, I wrote a book. It's done really well. I'm so grateful for it, but it was hell and back. Versus Lucia, she just loved to write. So after the book event, I figured I'd never see her again. She was so busy, right? But then she followed up with this detailed, thoughtful email. And she didn't even seem annoyed that it took me forever to get back to her. And so then I'm thinking, she's doing all of this stuff and she still has time to follow up with people she doesn't really know. Again, who is this person? She's nuts, right? But only in the best way. The other thing is, when we first met at that book event, she was so genuinely curious about my book that I just kind of assumed she had ADHD. And then she started rattling off all the things she'd done. And so I'm thinking only an ADHD brain that figured out action is the antidote to overwhelm could pull all of this off. But when I asked you, Lucia, you were like, no, I've never really thought about that. But over the next couple of months, I got the sense that maybe you had started thinking about it. Maybe you were reading a little bit about it. Maybe you were connecting some dots. And I know you haven't been diagnosed, but I'm curious, where are you now in all of this? What are you thinking?
But I have been diagnosed since I met you. I sent it to you in a text, but I know that that's a thing for you reading the text. That's okay.
Wait, you sent me a text that you were diagnosed?
I did. I did. And it's largely in part to you. So, yes, we met at that book event, and I was so struck by your energy. I'm like, okay, this is going to really date me, but I'm like kind of Deanna Troy in Star Trek Next Generation in terms of like picking up on people's like emotional states and energy. And I just like feel this energy field about people. And yours was like this disco ball. And I'm like, oh, I'm like a disco ball too. Like this is, I was like, oh, she's like me. And so I don't know if you remember how focused I was on you at that book event and talking to you as much as I could before we all had to sit down and be quiet. And then it was after that when we struck up kind of a friendship that at one point you said to me very gently, you said, Lucia, has anyone ever suggested to you that you might have an ADHD brain? And I was like, no, I was no, I said you're the first one. And I picked up your book and I was listening to some of your podcasts and watching some of your clips. And I was like, oh, okay, yeah, check that, check that, check that. And then the list grew so long that I went, oh, timeout on the field. And like this could explain a lot. So then this is going to crack you up. So then I have a very good friend who I've known for over 30 years, and she's retired now, but her whole profession was special education, and she tested kids for and adults, but for ADHD and dyslexia, and then also tutored them. So she has these testing instruments. So I'm talking to her one day, and I told her about you, and I said, well, she was sort of asking me if I thought if anyone ever suggested it, and my friend said, Lucia, I've known you had ADHD for 20 years. She said, I thought you knew. I said, I said, I didn't know that. How would I know that? And she's like, oh yeah, absolutely. She said, you're like squarely, firmly ADHD. She said, I can test you if you want. And so that was actually just a couple months ago. And I said, well, sure. I'm curious. I mean, I love a good quiz, right? Like a Cosmo quiz. I once took this Cosmo quiz. Are you a hunk magnet? I was not a hunk magnet, but only because I was too classy. And so I'm like, ooh, a quiz. Let's do the quiz. And it was, I forget what the test is called, but she did it. And I was like, yeah. So yeah, that was just a couple months ago. And it's all really because of you, because of meeting you and your book and your podcast. And I was like, oh, snap. This explains like my whole life, explains so many personal interactions, relationships, explains so many feelings of being like confused and left out and like, well, why aren't these people getting it? Like, why isn't everyone? Because you don't necessarily think you're special. Okay. And you have to also, let's juxtapose this to being a Gen X female person in the world. And as a Gen X female person in the world, you know what I learned? You are not special. You will not be praised. You will not be noticed. You will not be recognized. Nothing you do is special. So why would I think that anything about me was noteworthy or, anything out of the ordinary? So it was a real eye opener.
I suspect, like me, when I'm reading your bio, you're seeing all these stuff. And that's not even the half of it, by the way. We just had to cut it off. You're hearing this and you're thinking, oh my gosh, I really have done a lot. But are you always thinking it's never enough? There's something more?
It's not so much that I think it's not enough. So, for example, like you mentioned, my women's historical fiction novel coming out this October. And I know that book is enough. I know it. Like, I know it. You don't even have to tell me how good it is. I know it's good. By the way, we have recent research on don't even bother with the humble brag, that it's actually ineffective and has the opposite effect, that if you're going to brag, just do it outright.
And I love that about you.
And it's like, I'm just going to brag because it is that good. And so I know that that's enough. It's more that I get restless. Like, well, okay, that's done, but what's next? Now, and it's not just what's next. It's like all these plates are spinning all at the same time. Like I have, again, the disco ball. So it's always all going on. But I do tend to feel a sense of satisfaction. But then you also pointed out these when we got together one time, and we were actually sitting on my sofa in my living room sipping tea from my great grandmother's tea set, if you recall. And I was telling you casually about how much it annoyed me when my husband chooses food. Not just him, anyone. It's just that I hear him chewing food more than anyone else. We were just kind of chit-chatting like girlfriends. And you're like, oh yeah, by the way, that's a comorbidity of ADHD. And this was before I was diagnosed. So I was like, oh, that's where the symptoms they kept piling up. And I was like, oh.
What were you like as a child? I'm curious.
I did not have any confidence. I was diagnosed actually with epilepsy. I had what they thought were seizures. And so I had to go on this, none of the drugs were working to control the seizures. And so they had to put me on this experimental at the time drug called Depakote. I had problems. I had a lot of side effects. And so I was kind of like flunking out of my classes. And then the neurologist told my parents, don't tell anyone at her school or any of the teachers because she will be stigmatized. So no one knew. And then I had this older brother who was like a supernova, right? He was like popular and smart and athletic and everyone loved him. And so all the teachers had him first. And so they got me and I'm drugged up and I just can't concentrate. I can't do anything. And they were like, well, what happened to you? They had no idea. And looking back, especially as a special education advocate myself since 1997, I realized, oh, I should have had a plan. I should have had a 504 plan. There should have been some advocacy there, and I did not get it. And so the teachers had no idea what was going on. I was ostracized at school because of my shaking, and they said that the rumor was that I had been in the insane asylum and got electroshock therapy, and that's why I had the convulsions. And so they would throw their garbage and their food at me at lunchtime. Isn't this a sad story? And so wait. So then I went and I would eat my lunch in the library, so people would throw stuff at me. And then the librarian caught me. She said, "You're not allowed to be in here." And God forbid she find out why I'm hiding in the library, right? No. This was, the 70s and the 80s in the Midwest, right? We didn't have emotional quotient. We didn't have like mental health awareness, none of that nonsense, right? So then I just hid in a bathroom stall and I would eat my lunch there. So when you say like, how was my childhood? And yet I feel like, gosh, I had a pretty great childhood. Like I got to like ride my bike wherever I wanted, like no helmet, of course. And I was free. I lived in a safe neighborhood in the Midwest with great public schools. And my parents didn't need to know where I was. They just, I was somewhere and I was fine. And then my mom would, I'm not making this up, she would ring a cowbell to call us home for dinner. Like I'd be whatever, 5 yards over, and I'd hear the bell go, oh, time to go home for dinner. So I actually feel like I had a wonderful childhood. And that all that stuff that happened to me was like, well, that's nothing special. Remember, Gen X, well, that's nothing special. It was just life. It was just life. So I just sort of kept on plugging away, didn't have a lot of friends, struggled in school, except when it came to learning a foreign language. And then it was like, I didn't even have to try. It was like, I would look at the vocabulary list, instantly memorize. It was almost like what do they call that? Photographic memory. The grammar, everything about it, it was like I just absorbed it through my skin. Same with learning piano. So I started to find these little things that I seemed to take to really naturally, and I kind of leaned into those. And then my parents sent me to sleepaway tennis camp, to this like really, really rigorous tennis camp in Kenosha, Wisconsin. And I tell you what, that really changed a lot for me. I mean, sports, wow. Sports can turn around someone's life, because then talk about like nervous system stuff.
Absolutely. And dopamine.
And dopamine, but just managing all that dysregulation that was happening in my body, that it was going to take me till age 54 to understand that what getting really trained at tennis did for me. And then it got me on a tennis team in high school, and then so sports made a big difference. Now I understand, like for my nervous system, right? Yeah.
And so did sports also help you with your grades?
Yeah, I think well, sports helped me with my grades. It's hard to isolate these two because then I was able to get off of the Depakote. They took me off to see how I would do it, so I didn't have the brain fog.
So, Lucia, were you on that Depakote for years for nothing?
Yes, because it turns out now my current doctor, she says, "Oh, I don't think you had epilepsy." She said, "I think you were having panic attacks."
Oh, my heavens.
Because I was actually also being ruthlessly bullied in school, like ruthlessly, so like already. But you don't talk. That wasn't a thing. Bullying was not a thing. She just listened to me and like, look, we're not going to necessarily know for sure, but she did an MRI. She's like, we don't see anything that indicates she said, I think it was a panic attacks. So now I'm not even sure if it was epilepsy. Right? So, but to answer your question, yes. So now I'm like in high school and I'm on the tennis team, and then I actually made varsity tennis team even as a sophomore, and then I'm taking the AP classes, and now I'm now I'm really like things are starting to fall in place for me. Like but it was like, you know what? Late bloomers for the win, right? So total late bloomer. Yeah, and then I ended up applying to UC Berkeley for college from a small town in the Midwest. Okay, imagine. I mean, nobody did that. It was crazy. It was considered a crazy thing to do and a crazy place to go. And got in and moved out to UC Berkeley and did not look back. Did not go back. Here I am.
I'm assuming if I asked you, did you always feel different than everyone else, you'd probably say yes, but you didn't really know why?
I totally felt different. But here's the rub. I thought that was nothing special to feel different. I thought it was just normal to feel different, which that sounds like really paradoxical, doesn't it? Oh, it felt normal to feel different. I thought, well, everyone must feel this way, even though I knew it was like, oh, I like really wasn't fitting in. I like literally was I was the last person picked for, remember in PE class when you'd pick people for, and I was like that person who was the last, so I just didn't really give it any special credence or attention. I just thought, this is how life is. This is just life.
Mm.
I'm not special. It's nothing special.
Did you have any part of you, though, Lucia, that you didn't really care that you were different? In fact, you actually kind of liked being different.
Not until much, much later. So, another thing that I think is common to my generation of women is this people pleasing and really wanting to be accepted and to fit in. So, I was definitely a try hard, all right, for sure. And I really wanted to fit in. I wanted to please people. I wanted to cooperate. And in fact, I mean, to my detriment. In fact, there are examples in my life where I was trying to fit into an environment, a context, a workplace, fill in the blank, where it really was not a fit, but I so badly wanted it to be that I stayed too long and it hurt me. It actually hurt me. So it's taken me far too long actually to realize that my neurodivergence is actually like kicks ass, right? Like that I am like OG, that I was just like so far like light years different, in a good way from, the mean, the big hump in the bell curve that I should have been celebrating it, right? That's hard to understand when you're a teenager, when you're in your early 20s, and then, out of law school and you just want to get a job and try and you got to pay off those loans, you got to fit into this law firm or whatever. But it was a struggle. Like I hated working at a law firm. I hated it. It was so rigid and so structured and so stifling. Yeah, absolutely not the kind of writing that I was good at. In fact, I remember for my first job when they asked an interview process and they asked for a writing sample and I gave them, I had been writing for the Italo Americano newspaper in San Francisco because I was also teaching Italian, of course, at a language school for children, Italian language school for children. And yeah, sad. And I said, oh, here, I write for the Italo Americano, and I sent them one of the articles and they called me back and they said, could you send us something less creative? And I was like, what the hell? Like you people have absolutely no imagination, because legal writing, yeah, I do not like legal writing. So I ended up in this space that I think it was actually really good for my street cred, like, because now when you look me up on LinkedIn, you're like, damn, right? So it was like good for me, for my development. And I think all of that stuff sort of earning my stripes is what then paved the path for me to then be able to like fully come into the person I wanted to be and do the writing that I wanted to do.
Totally feminist erotica.
It's actually under a pen name so that I'm not out of shame at all. Just so I'm not confusing like my professional brand. Black, I hate saying the word brand, as it refers to me as a person. But anyway, my professional brand, and then my erotica Substack is. Let's not confuse the two of them. So it is under a pen name, but
What is it you have to tell us?
it's so fun.
It actually is.
It's so fun. It's also like it's deeply thoughtful. It's not smut at all. I mean, you've read it. I mean, it's like, okay, there's some like it's got some substance, right? And it'll definitely make you tingly. So anyway, yes, that's
You have to tell them what it is. What's the name? I can't remember.
oh, it's called 2 Minute Taboo. And so that's perfect for ADHD people. I was like, you know what? This is not supposed to be a time suck. We don't want to derail your daily life with this stuff. It's just like, oh, like a quick hit takes about 2 minutes. Some take like 6 minutes. Okay, I'm just gonna confess to you, but it'll feel like 2 minutes. The longer 6 minute ones still feel like 2 minutes. So it's called 2 minute taboo. You get your quick like 2 minute hit and kind of makes you feel nice and tingly and inspired and gets your juices going, and then you can move on with your day and your life, and it doesn't interfere, it doesn't disrupt your life, it enhances your life. That's the idea.
I love it. I love it. Okay, so you are one of the foremost women experts on negotiation. You're also a law professor, a mom, an author, and you have ADHD. How has your ADHD shaped the way you approach negotiation? Both professionally, but I also want to say personally, because I've actually seen you in real life, and I'll talk about that a little bit later. I've seen you use it in real life, and you are brilliant at it.
Oh, I'm not even sure what you're talking about, seeing me use it in real life. So I'm going to be interested to hear that story myself. I had been teaching negotiation at two University of California law schools. It's been over 20 years now. I started in 2003, and it was it was only in 2022 when I thought, I think it'd be fun to do a podcast, a negotiation podcast, for, people like everyday people, not just law students or business people or, this, it seems like it's treated as sort of an elite skill, like for the C-suite, and sales and marketing professionals and lawyers. And that's utter poppycock, right? And it's, I wanted to really point out how it's this really critical everyday skill. And so I was looking through all my teaching notes since 2003, and for the very first time ever, I noticed that every single assigned reading for my class since 2003 had been authored by not just a man, but a white man. And I was like, wait, no, how is that possible? Wait. So I got my time machine and I dialed it back to 2003, and I said, well, okay, what women authors on negotiation could I have been assigning? And there was like a whole lot of nothing. There was one seminal work in 2003, more of a sociology book, and then another one didn't come until around 2015 or so. Okay, and I went, why, how have I not noticed this before? This like lack of inclusivity on this topic of negotiation. So I did a little more research and I went, wow, this topic is completely white male dominated. And at that point I couldn't unsee it. And I'm like, well, now I have to write a book. Like I was just going to do a fun podcast, like a fun, again, short, like my episodes are 15 to 20 minutes, the longest one, because it's on all the cognitive maps and traps, I call them. That one's 40 minutes. That's the longest one. But like quick, you could get a quick sip of it and be like, ooh, I got a little nugget, and move on with your life and practice it. But then I was like, damn, now I have to write a book. So, but I thought it's got to be, and this is where the ADHD stuff comes in. It's like, look, I'm a reader. Okay, I was a literature major. I read 2 books a week. All right, I am a reader. But not everybody is a reader. You can't just write a book and have it be like words, 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 words. Okay, that's too much. Like, especially on a topic where people, especially historically speaking, women who tend to hate negotiation and tend to describe it in ways like going to the dentist. I needed to make it like fun and splashy and stylish and like really, really easy to digest and full of stories. And so it's like, okay, you can't just have the words. You got to have like some charts. Okay. It's filled with my 5th grade level art. Okay. So all of the illustrations, I have no art training at all. I just like make a mess with color. Okay. Like look, stuff like that. And then you got, have these like everyday super tips, these call out boxes. So you're not just, dealing with words, 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 and you can literally like open it and like just go, open it to any page and get something out of it. Okay. Better if you read it front to back because it's scaffolded. Okay. This is a highly organized work. And there's like a reason that the chapter on listening comes 5 chapters before the chapter on questioning. Okay, it is surgically designed, but that's not the only way you have to consume it. Okay, because you got to the ADHD brain is like, you got to come at me with like 27 different things so I can figure out what's going to work. And maybe on this day I'm going to want to read a whole chapter front to back, but maybe on this day I'm just going to want to open it up and get a quick hit. And so that's how I designed it. It's like fun and splashy and stylish and distinctly female voiced. And like that was the like really important part. So Yeah, and there's nothing out there like it. And again, I'm like, how? Because to me, and this is how I think, my sisters here listening, I wonder if you think this way. You go, how is no one else? If I've thought of it, how has no one else thought of it? Like, how has this not been done before? It seems so obvious, like that. So that sums up a lot of the. This, I don't mean to sound arrogant, but it does sum up a lot of like my reactions in life when I look at things or work in groups, and I'm like, well, it seems doesn't isn't this? And I'm like connecting a bazillion different dots, and I'm like, but isn't that obvious? Turns out, no, it's not obvious. It's because my special stealth brain is able to do it. All right. That is bitchin', you know?
So, okay, that begs the question then. I agree with you. Most of the negotiation advice is written for a courtroom, right? I mean, I'm thinking like Perry Mason or,
It's written for like, yeah, like the big merger and acquisition, or then you have the one that's written by the former FBI hostage negotiator that everyone talks about. That's what, there's some good stuff in there. But again, it's like this idea that is perpetuated that this negotiation is for business, right? And you need to be like an MBA or a C-suite or a sales and marketing. Like that's what, and so you're being sold a bill of goods. It's nonsense, and it especially steers women away from doing it themselves. Like, oh, like this is some specialized skill. Don't try this at home, kids. Right? Well, that is hurting you. It is hurting women to not negotiate to the tune of, and I could do this later or now if you want, maybe not at all, but I can run through a little scenario, because it's to the tune of about $1 million that it's costing women to not negotiate. By the time they're 60, they've actually forfeited over $1 million by avoiding negotiation, thinking, I'm not good enough, I'm not smart enough, I don't have those skills, those are elite skills. And guess what else? You do not need to go and pay for a $4,000 workshop, or excuse me, summit, on negotiation. Put that money into your retirement account or your kids' education account. You do not need to pay someone a lot of money to learn to negotiate. Okay? You can pick up some tips, and then what you need to do, here's the rub. Are you ready? You're not going to like this. You got to practice.
Yeah.
And I mean every day. I mean the 6-minute abs. Okay, 6-minute abs, right? You want the washboard abs? You can get them in 6 minutes a day. I know, because I got them. Okay, and the way you do it is by not sitting on the sofa scarfing Cheetos while you watch the ab workout video. You get down on the floor and you start doing some basic planks and, bicycles, but just for 6 minutes a day. That's it, okay? And then over time, you develop that as a habit. And we have lots of different research on how you form a habit, how long it takes to form a habit. It depends on context and depends on a bunch of things. But generally, it's going to take, at least 21 days, right? 21 to like 50 days to form a habit. But it's just 6 minutes a day for you to practice, which is why I then did the workbook and journal, which is why I did the free app, the free practice app, where you get one super tip a day. You go out and practice it. Practice, practice, practice.
You've alluded to the fact that there's all kinds of myths around negotiating. So, what do you like? Blow some of those up for us. Like, how do you teach women how to negotiate in real life?
Yeah. So the first thing we got to do is we got to disrupt the myth of the good girl negotiator. Okay. So women with ADHD are often labeled as too much, right? Too intense, too disorganized, too blunt.
Too demanding.
Yeah, right. Too definitely, you get that. If women negotiate, it's like, oh, you're being demanding or greedy,
Yeah.
or
You should just be quiet.
right. Just be grateful, right? So I am teaching how to reframe that narrative and lean into being too much with purpose. It's not about fitting in. It's about negotiating your space, your worth, and your time without apology. Okay. And then there are some cool things that you can use that you've already got inside of you that turns out are super stealth negotiating tools. What is actually, because how many here, raise your hand, even though I can't see you, have been labeled as intense or emotional, too emotional? Okay, right? Well, tuning into emotions is actually an incredible negotiation tool. And if you can, especially if you can tune into other people's emotions, wow. All right. And then also storytelling. Right? ADHD minds are full of stories, interwoven timelines, emotional arcs, nonlinear leaps. So, guess what? Story sharing or storytelling is actually a super stealth negotiation tool for a lot of reasons. It's ancient, it's nurturing, it's like it's across all cultures. It's stories are easier to remember, oftentimes in a stressful situation, than data. They're sticky. They stay with you, and so I'm there's a whole chapter on storytelling as a negotiation tool in For the Forces of Good. So I'm helping women harness that brain wiring to make better decisions, to advocate more powerfully, and even write books. Yeah, like The Covert Buccaneer, which is a dual timeline historical fiction novel, right? To take that brain of yours, that gift that you've got of that disco ball mind that is the ADHD brain, and use that as your superpower, because it is.
So, can you give us an example when you talk about storytelling and using storytelling in negotiations? I need a simple example because I'm still not sure. Okay, well, how do you use it?
How do you use it? Okay, so if you're in a sort of in a negotiation, or you're at a tense moment, or you think you're reaching impasse, you could just pause and say, let me tell you a story. I mean, this has happened in my own life, and this is kind of how I even learned it from other people, where they'll say, let me tell you a story. And then they tell you some story. You kind of like put down your laptop or your pen, or, whatever you're gripping onto in the moment. And you're listening to someone tell you a story. And you're like opens up your mind. You're curious. You're there's a little bit of suspense, like where's this going? What's going to happen next? It's relatable. You can like kind of relate to the characters, or maybe you don't like the characters in there, right? And then you have some feelings about that. And so it like reduces cortisol. So, and it could be just about any story, right? It builds rapport. So you're really just sharing a story about something about your grandfather, or something that happened to you as a kid. Like I've lost count of the number of stories I've actually already shared in this podcast, right? About my childhood, about my diagnosis, about, working in a law firm and not fitting in, about, oh, can you give us something less creative for your writing? So these are all I'm doing here is really telling stories. I'm not lecturing you on how to negotiate. So that's the more that you can incorporate framing things as a story, the more salient you're going to be, and building rapport and getting all those good, taking down the cortisol, building up oxytocin, which is the bonding hormone, and the dopamine, which is the pleasure hormone, and keeping people with you, keeping people in the room and at the table, and getting them to say yes.
So, when I think of negotiation prior to your book, I would think of, again, oh, I don't know, it's a divorce, or, you're negotiating a book deal. I remember when you were going through that. But you are literally talking about negotiating a discount.
Oh, yeah. I'm literally talking about getting your stubborn toddler to eat their peas. All right. That is a negotiation. And I can use sophisticated negotiation theory that I've taught to my law students since 2003 to and apply that to getting your toddler to eat their peas, because it's the same stuff in an everyday context that a lot of people, and especially women, do not think of as a negotiation opportunity. So part of my mission, right, is to get women to reframe their lens as they're like in every down context, going, oh, this is a negotiation, I'm going to practice. This is a negotiation, I'm going to practice. Oh, don't want to eat your peas? Well, and then I could talk about power versus leverage, and how we use power versus leverage. They're not the same thing, by the way, to get your toddler to eat your peas. I can talk about turning, getting them to say yes into getting them to say no to get them to eat their peas. I can turn it into the appearance, the illusion of giving them a choice to get them to eat their peas. There are like multiple ways using negotiation theory to get that kid to eat their peas. You talked about these high stakes, divorce, book deals, right? Salary. That's the biggest question I get. Oh, Lucia, how do I negotiate my salary? And I'm like, okay, well, first of all, don't call it salary, to call it compensation package, because salary is just part of it, and that part might not be negotiable. But my point is this. My point is that you need to be doing it in low stakes contexts in your everyday life. And they are everywhere, every day, including at your dinner table. That is how you negotiate. And that is how you then internalize your own voice. That you are a competent and a confident everyday negotiator. So that, I'm rounding up here, so that when you get to that higher stakes negotiation in your life, and you will, you're like, oh, I can do this. I got this.
Okay, so I want you to explain a negotiation strategy to get your 3-year-old to eat his peas.
Okay, so, all right, I've mentioned a few. So you can, first of all, here's what you don't do. You don't get into a power struggle with your 3-year-old. All right, you've already lost that. Now, you are the more powerful party. You are bigger, you are stronger, you have a more developed brain, you have more resources, you're more powerful. But the toddler in this scenario is the one with the leverage, okay? Because the toddler is the only one who can eat the peas, right? You cannot make them eat the peas. They're the only ones who can do it. That's leverage, all right? So the first thing I want people to do is assess that. Who's got the power in this negotiation? Who has the leverage? Understanding also that leverage is dynamic, all right? So leverage can shift throughout the negotiation, right? It's actually pretty exciting. And then you got to go, okay, hold on. Why do they have to eat their peas? Like what purpose do the peas serve? Why is it important to me, mom, that my toddler eat their peas? Okay, then answer that question. Well, because they need to grow up and be healthy, and they have to have a balanced diet, and because, what kind of mother would I be if I didn't have them eating vegetables? And so I'm like, oh, okay, now we're getting somewhere. Now we're getting to some identity issues. I need to be a good mom. I need to feel like a good mom. We're getting to sort of safety and development, just basic, making them a strong person in the world. So we call those interests. Those are the interests behind the position. You must eat your peas. So once you've identified those interests, then you got a little playground. Okay, so then you can go, well, okay, if those are the reasons, well, does it have to be peas? Like, what could it be? Something else? What's their favorite color? Could it be purple cauliflower, right? So make it purple cauliflower. Give them a choice. Say, would you like purple cauliflower or green peas with your mac and cheese for dinner? All right. So notice the vegetable there is non-negotiable, but you're giving them an illusion of a choice because they get to pick it. Now, the more people have agency over their choices, the more compliance you will get with those choices rather than something imposed on you by a third party or your mom. In this scenario, your mom is a third party, okay? You can also give them another illusion of choice. Would you like to eat your purple cauliflower or peas before or after watching Little Mermaid? All right, again, the eating of the peas is non-negotiable. All right, but they have some agency and some choice there. You could also, what I call, use a third party as an audience or an excuse. Their favorite Uncle Mark just loves his peas. And so you invite Uncle Mark over to dinner and he just gobbles up his peas, and your child wants to be just like Uncle Mark, and so they gobble up their peas too. So these are just off the top of my head, okay? But you see my point, I hope, that even in that like extremely common scenario, if you can internalize some negotiation strategies about power and leverage and choice and agency and asking questions both of yourself and of them, then you're not going to fall into that power struggle, and they're going to eat their peas. Or purple cauliflower.
Well, and what do we normally do, right? As parents, it's like, I'm the mom, eat your peas,
Right.
And it just becomes this battle.
The power struggle, and then you're frustrated, and it's extremely energy draining too, right? So learning to use everyday tools also, and this is very important for ADHD wired people, it is energy efficient. We talk about, in fact, I saw on another podcast of yours with a episode of yours with another guest, you talking about not just time management, but energy management. So it's very like energy management friendly, learning to incorporate these things into your life. And it will transform your relationships actually and get you to that deeper level of understanding with people and closeness with people. People will trust you. Like I mean, Tracy, you told the story of first meeting me, and you were like, "Wow!" And I was asking questions, and I was curious. Curiosity is a negotiation tool. Asking questions, asking the right questions, the right way, at the right time, is a key negotiation tool. I now just live and breathe it everywhere I go. And I'm genuine about it. I'm not trying to get something from you. So we think often that negotiation is about persuasion. Oh, it's about getting someone to do what you want. That's an aspect of it in some negotiations. That is an aspect of negotiation. But persuasion and negotiation are not synonyms. Neither is conflict and negotiation, not synonyms. Conflict is one category of negotiation, but only one category.
And that's what we usually think of, right? Which is likely why a lot of people don't want to have anything to do with the negotiation because they can't handle any conflict.
Yeah, it's super cringy because they think of it as conflict. And that's another way, like, let's flip that script. Like right off the bat, we got to flip that script, right? Negotiation is opportunity. Negotiation is deal making. Negotiation is creativity. Negotiation is powerful. Negotiation is storytelling. Negotiation is bonding.
Well, and it seems to me that if people like you, they're going to be more likely, right, to want to help you get what you want.
Exactly. And that gets to the point of, you hear it in real estate, location, location, location. Well, in negotiation, it's rapport, rapport, rapport. It never goes out of style. And unfortunately, it has a little, with all these Zoom meetings and everything, people just getting right down to business and there's no rapport building. You could do that better in person. So I encourage anyone listening to this to find ways to build rapport into every day. It's not that hard. I even have tips, and I think that's in chapter 2. I think it's called Play Nice. And there are ways to actually practice rapport. When someone looks really like polished and smooth, and you think, wow, that just comes to them naturally. People say to me, well, it's easy for you, Lucia. It just comes to you naturally. I've been practicing this for over 20 years. That's why it looks so natural and polished, but that you can ahead of time plan you can have some like rapport building questions in like a little imaginary hopper that you carry around with you, like asking people like, would you rather questions, would you rather be attacked by, what is it? One giant duck or one horse-sized duck or 100 duck-sized horses. Okay. But you could have a bunch of would you rather questions that you ask people, or asking people, what was the first thing you remember spying with your very own money? People love to answer that question. And now what are they doing? Now what are they doing? They're telling you a story, and you're listening to them, and you're taking them back to this moment in their life that is actually giving them all good feels. Probably, usually that's how it works. Or asking, if it's two people, I love to ask, how did you meet? People love to tell how they met stories, right? So it's about being genuine. Like you are genuinely curious about this person because your whole life has led to this moment.
Leads to my story. We were at a dinner party together, and there was another guest. And this had come up a couple times in, her conversations. It was all about the elite schools, the luxury stuff, her daughter, the right image. And you right away honed in on that. I've known her for a long time. And I knew that when, with her especially, she's so hung up on all this stuff, but it's not making her happy, or it's actually making her more anxious and stressed. And I remember you sitting there just listening, like really listening. And then you didn't challenge anything she said, but what you did was you were able to reflect back the emotion, and you were listening.
Okay, everybody listen up, because this is really important. So I get asked constantly, Lucia, what's the number one most important negotiation skill? And if you ask a bunch of negotiation experts, a lot of them are going to say planning and preparation. Okay, that's pretty important. And by the way, I have a free planning worksheet as well. Research actually shows that women outperform men in negotiation when they plan, as opposed to when men plan. But when women plan, they tend to outperform men. Women also tend to outperform men in negotiation when they've had some training, even a little, and when they advocate for others, not themselves. And this one is super fascinating to me, while walking.
Wait, what? So are they talking and walking?
Talking and walking, and you're negotiating, and women tend to outperform men. That's a pretty recent research out of Stanford University. But let's answer your question, or let me. You said I'm not sure even what you were doing there when I was listening to that dinner party guest. I got it because, and this is the part where I say this is the number one negotiation skill right here. Are you ready? All right, could take this to the bank. It is listening. Now, when I say listening, I mean listening to someone like they have never been listened to before. And now I will have people say, well, Lucia, I'm already a pretty good listener. I'm already a good listener. And I'm like, you're probably not as good as you think. Okay. And this is chapter 5. And I take you through basically this 3-step process for listening that you got to practice. You got to practice it every day, the 6-minute abs, right? And you're not just listening for the content, the words that are being spoken, Tracy. You're listening to the meta message, not the just what, but the why this matters to them. Why it matters is actually more important. Thus, we are treating emotions as another category of facts. And that's what I was doing.
You got that there was a disconnect between her actual values inwardly versus outwardly. And then you asked questions that were so pointed but they weren't challenging. It was literally just curiosity. And I could see in her mind that, oh, there was like a light on.
Yeah. So part of the job that I see of a great listener is actually to help the talker talk. Because people don't necessarily have something clear in their mind. And then when they try and verbalize it, it isn't all organized. So, as a deep listener, listening to them like they've never been listened to before, you can reflect back what they're saying and try out sort of some meta messaging like, oh, but it seems like someone for whom, helping people is really important. That's an important part of your identity. If you can get at some of those identity summaries and the why it matters to them summaries, and then here's the thing, here's what's so great, it's fail proof, because then you either get clarification, no, that's not really exactly it. Well, that doesn't mean you suck because you got it wrong. It means you're helping the talker talk. It means you're helping the talker actually figure it out themselves because it's not clear to them, because people are incongruous. We are all incongruous, right? And we're trying to make all these pieces inside us match up, and it's confusing, right? So if you have someone like that deeply listening to you and then reflecting it back with the emotions as facts, and you can go, no, that's not quite it. Or what happens is they go, yes, that's right. That's right. And guess what happens in either case? They keep going. So they keep sharing. And again, it gets deeper and deeper and deeper. And I also like how you pointed out that me asking the questions only came after I deeply listened. There's like an order of operation, like my dear Aunt Sally, Yeah.
You actually, now that I'm thinking about it, you actually helped her process what her true thoughts were around, and I wish I could remember exactly what the conversation was, but I remember just sitting back on the couch, watching this go on, and I was just fascinated because you made a difference to her. You asked her questions that she had never thought about before that made her feel better.
It made her feel seen, I think. Isn't that what we want, especially Gen X women, right? We're just used to being invisible, but more than just us. We actually want to be seen, right?
Totally.
Yeah, and it doesn't have to be a time suck. So when I teach mediation certification courses through the UC law schools, and I talk to people about this, and they'll say, "Well, that just seems like it's going to take a lot of time to have to reflect back all that emotion." I say, "Actually, no. If you're practicing, if you practice it, and remember in low stakes, everyday context, 6 minutes a day, 6 minute abs, you're going to see that you can do it actually pretty efficiently." It's kind of like in okay, Disney Pixar Cars, all right? So we probably have a few parents here who watch that on repeat with their kids, right? Disney Pixar Cars, and okay, Lightning McQueen, he's trying to make that turn, practicing that turn on that the dirt circuit, and Doc Martin, right, the old retired, Paul Newman does his voice as he's watching, he just can't get the turn, he can't get it, and he says to Lightning McQueen, he says, "Son, you need to turn right to go left." And Lightning McQueen is like, "Oh, okay, you old geezer. I guess an upside down backwards world, you turn right to go left, And that is exactly what he needed to do to make that turn. And it's what you do to get deals is you go slow to go fast. You take a little time to reflect back the why it's important, get to those kind of like identity things and the emotional facts. You take that time, and it actually isn't that much of a time suck, really. It feels like you might be going slow. And then, wow, look at how all the pieces are starting to fall together. Okay. You just built trust and rapport, and you boosted oxytocin and dopamine and all these great things that make people want to do a deal with you, you know?
And I think that if you are genuinely curious, like most of us with ADHD brains are, it's actually so much more fun because you're getting to know what's going on with that person and what's important to them.
Exactly. And that's why I use the word harness, which I know is such an overused like social media word now, but I really mean it. Like you are taking all of that frenetic, what about this? What about this? What about this? Ooh, tell me about this. And you're harnessing it in this kind of disciplined way and focusing it on someone so that then they're like, wow, you get me. Well, I mean, how does that feel to you? How does that feel to you when someone like Tracy, when I met you, and I'm like, oh man, she actually gets me. Like I wanted to spend time with you. I'm like, when can I see her next? Like I think about you when you're not around. I can't wait. Whenever I see a message from you, I'm like, oh, it's Tracy. I get so excited because like, oh my gosh, this is someone who gets me. It feels so good. It's like a relief.
Well, we were doing the same thing. I was asking you all kinds of questions because I'm trying to figure out your brain because I was so curious. I'm like, she's a lot like me. And then it sounds like you were doing the same thing. So that is hilarious. So, do you have a pep talk or some sort of pre negotiation ritual when you're about to ask for something big? Or is it just so natural to you, you just hop right into it?
I don't have any pre negotiation ritual that I do necessarily. And I will say, so it is pretty natural to me, but I will say that I always prepare. And that does not mean like, marshaling the troops. Whoa, we got to prepare. It's like, again, I have this this like really fun worksheet that you can do for it's really good for preparing, but I've gotten so fast at it that I'm always doing that little preparation in my head, or I tend to type things out too. But so I actually always prepare. I always prepare. And remember, women outperform men in negotiation when they prepare. Okay, even a little bit. So
And I bet they prepare more than men.
probably, well, and ADHD women prepare even more.
Yeah.
Right.
I couldn't go in anywhere without over preparing.
I guess when you say rituals, like, well, I pathologically, prepare. That's something that I do. And other than that, though, Tracy, I really treat each negotiation as unique and distinct. And I'm like dialing in on like, okay, who are the players here? What's going on? What's behind the scenes? Like, what are their alternatives if they don't get a deal? What are my alternatives if I don't get a deal? Who has the leverage? Can I shift that? And say, can I influence their alternatives? Can I shift the leverage? And I'm like, really, it's very, very bespoke to each situation, right? And that's also what makes a great negotiator is you're really paying attention to that individual situation and those people. Again, the hyper focus that we can tend to have,
Yeah.
it becomes your superpower in negotiation, the way that we can do that. And the way that I know and I bet a bunch of other people here too, are able to notice things in a room, especially if you're like just not talking and observing, which is, remember, invisibility is also a superpower. And you're like, hold on, wait, that and that and that. And you might be thinking, because I often, and I'm like, Well, if I figured that out, so have they. Like, it's so obvious, right? I'm sure they already thought of that. Like, I got to tell you, 9 times out of 10, when I'm like, well, but did you notice how? And I pointed out, they're like, uh, no. And I'm like the only one who noticed it. Well, that's you. That's you too. Because of your hyper focus and your intensity and all those things that make you too much. Those are the things that are going to make you like just the bomb of a negotiator if you practice every day, 6-minute abs. I love life. I'm doing what I love. Like, it's funny to hear how much you dislike writing because I'm like, if I don't write, I feel like I'm dying inside.
Okay, so this is my Lucia. I hate writing. I love to have written, but it is so painful for me versus for you. It is literally more natural to you than speaking, and speaking is obviously very natural.
It gushes out of me. Do you know how much I write, Tracy? Do you know how much I write? This is how much I write. Because, all right, a writer's got to write, okay? It doesn't matter what it is. It could be a text to Tracy. It could be an Amazon product review.
Oh my God, I don't know how you have time to do all this.
Because a writer's got to write. It could be a personal journal. It could be a nonfiction book. It could be a dual timeline. I don't know if you can see it. You know, the Covert Buccaneer. It could be anything. It could be an email, a letter. I have written so many Amazon product reviews that I got invited to their Vine program. Have you ever been on Amazon and you see a Vine review? And I always thought, like, who are these who are these people? It's people who have written so many reviews that then have been what do you call it? Voted as helpful. Because when I write a review, I'm like detailed about it, you know, and I really mean it, you know, because everything I do, Tracy, I really mean it, you know. And so I wrote so many that I got this email the end of last year saying, hey, we want to invite you to the Vine program, which means I get all this free stuff. But I just have to write a review for it, which is like, I'm going to do that anyway. So, you know, that's like sleeves off my vest. So a writer's just got to write. So I have to be writing every day. I write every day.
Wow. So did I just ask you what's your number one ADHD workaround, or did we start talking about something before I asked that? That's my question. My final
You know,
question.
you didn't ask me that question, and I'm kind of gonna flip that question because I honestly, I'm being really genuine because this is how I feel. I don't see these as workarounds. I don't see that as like, oh, because I guess in my mind, this is just me. When you say workaround, I think of a problem. Like, you have a problem and you have to work around it. And it's like, I guess I just don't see it as a problem, you know? So, but I have to go back to preparation, you know? And that's one of the reasons too, when we teach negotiation at the law schools, it's simulated. We do all these simulations, right? So you're actually in the moment, you're playing out these roles in this situation. You have to prepare for it, and then you play the role, because that's how it gets into, like, again, like, it's remapping your nervous system. It's like muscle memory. So I got to go back to the preparation. I prepare for everything and I enjoy it, but I actually enjoy preparing, right? It's not a drudgery for me.
But it's also not a drudgery for you because you are doing things only that you really love and are interested in.
Now I am, and that's another thing. And everyone here probably already knows this, but boy, if an ADHD individual decides they are interested in something, okay, Katie, bar the door. We will not be stopped, right?
Yeah. I love it. Okay. Tell us what you're working on. Where can people find you if they want to know more about you and what you do? Let us know everything.
Oh, okay. So probably you should put either my link tree in the show notes or all the individual links you can put in there, whatever. I'll leave that up to you. But you know, you can find my books on Amazon. I'm just new on Instagram because my book PR team for the Covert Buccaneer, this one, they're like, oh, you need to get on Instagram because I kind of killed it on LinkedIn. But they're like, no, you really. I did. I killed it. I like dominated LinkedIn, and they're like, "No, you gotta get." And I said, "Oh, really?" But then I was like, I got it on Instagram, and I was like, "Oh, this is the fun place." I didn't know. Like, I didn't know it was the fun place, and so now I'm like making all these reels and sending them to music, and it's so fun.
You're good at writing too. That's why.
Yeah, that's right. But it's also I'm a creative, and Instagram is a space to be creative. So this one just this comes out October 13th. The Covert Buccaneer, dual timeline women's historical fiction set in San Francisco. Just this morning, I learned that it was a Book Life for Publishers Weekly's editor's pick. So it's like it's starting to happen. It's all starting to happen. And then get the free app, okay? So you can be practicing this. Again, it's called Forces of Good, and it's in my Linktree links. Okay, for US and Canada iOS users, it works now. For now, that's where it works. And it's free. And again, quick. It's quick. You get this one super tip each day and you're out. And then you got to practice it. And you don't get a new one for 24 hours. You can't just flip through them all. You have to wait. Okay. We got the workbook and the journal. Okay. Again, like fun. I feature dogs in all my books. All my books feature dogs. All right, so lots of ways to practice and read my stuff. You know about my Substack. I'm kind of everywhere. Like just Google my name. Like I'm kind of all over the place. I'm not like I'm all over the place, but I'm surgical. But I'm not disorganized. I'm all over the place, but there's nothing unorganized about it, actually. Yeah.
No, you are highly organized. And I think that's why when I first asked about the ADHD, you were like, "Mm."
Yeah, because I'm like, isn't that people who can't pay attention and are really unorganized? Because I'm really organized and I'm like intensely focused. So no, that can't be me. Famous last words.
Some of us are completely disorganized and we need to learn how to, because it calms our nervous system down, how to become organized. Others of us have learned that when we're in action, when we're organized, when we're, kind of, dare I say, sort of neurotic about planning, that life works better for us and our nervous system is more
Yeah,
regulated.
exactly. My challenge is actually sitting still, which is why I only get my hair cut once every 4 months. And I don't even let her like wash it or anything. I just I wash it, I go in, I'm like, cut it, because I'm like, I'm not going to sit still in this seat.
Oh my God, the guy that I've been using, I adore him. And he's in San Francisco and I've been using him for how old is my daughter? 26. So 25 years.
Wow.
But he's really, really slow because he's so busy. And I mean, sometimes I'm in there for 4 hours, Lucia. I'm just like, "Whoa."
No, but oh, well, you know what though? Next time, let me know. I'll come visit you. I'll come visit and I'll sit next to you and we'll chat.
I love it. Lucia, thank you so much for spending time with us here today. Do you know we've gone over by 15 minutes and it feels like we've been talking for 15, right?
Right.
Thank you again.
Thank you, Tracy. Thank you, everybody. Go be a force of good.
Yeah. So that's what I have for you for this week. If you like this episode with Lucia as much as I did, please let us know by leaving a review. Our goal is to change the conversation around ADHD, helping as many women as we possibly can learn how their ADHD brains work so that they too may discover their amazing strengths. Thank you so much for listening, and I'll see you here next week.